This is Jack Jackson. We're going to be looking at graphing today on the TI-84 and the nspire calculators. We're going to review real quickly about function graphing, but mostly we're going to be focusing on graphing with parametric equations and polar equations. So let's take a look here and see let's start with the TI-84. So you hit the y equals button and you can type this in. Normally this will be set up in function mode, so basically it's already in the form y equals, and the other side should be x's. So just something simple like y equals 2x, and then you hit graph and it graphs it. Now this may not be the window you want, so you can hit zoom and do some other things. For example, you can do a zoom standard, zoom 6. That will set the window from -10 to 10 on both x and y, which by the way is not a square window because this screen is not square. If you do a zoom square, this will put us on a square scale, and notice what that did was it left the y's alone, but it adjusted the x's to be a consistent scale. So we have that. If we hit trace, we just move along a curve here and it tells us an x and y point. We can actually type in an x value, let's say 4, and it will go straight to the formula, the point, and graph it here. It shows you the equation is y equals 2x. It puts the x that we typed in, and it tells us the y. So pretty straightforward. If we go to table setup, we tell it where to start our table at. Let's say we want to start at -3 and go up by 1 and do everything automatically. Then that starts at -3 and goes up by 1s. There, if we go down the table, it just extends our table by 1 because that's what our delta x or delta table is. We can extend it up and down the table like this. And of course we can graph multiple things. So that's basic graphing for regular function graphing. That you're probably really familiar with. Now the thing I want to introduce today is, next thing is polar graphing. So one thing I want to make sure I'm in radian mode when I do graphing, so let's fix that. And let's do parametric graphing next. So if you'll go to mode, notice where I set it to radian mode, I can also set this on parametric graphing. So now when I hit my y equals button, it says x1 of t and y1 of t. So I give x and y, I have to fill both of these blanks in, and for example I could say 5, and now when I hit the xt theta n button, when you're in function mode, that button gives you x. When you're in parametric mode, that button gives you t. When you're polar mode, it gives you theta, and when you're in sequence mode, it gives you n. So let's say 5t plus 3, and then say 2t minus 1, and we need to specify t values. So now when you go to the window button, notice that it not only does it have the x-min and x-max that we had before, which sets the size of the window. So those things are just the same as before, but it also has three things at the beginning that tells us where to start our t and where to finish our t. And I want to go from 0 to 1 this time. And then it says how big is our step. So basically what it does is for every time we advance by the t step, we start at t equals 0, then we're going to go up by whatever this says. We'll make it 0.01. So this is going to graph 100 points. Okay, so it's going to go from t equals 0, then t equals 0.01, t equals 0.02, 0.03, all the way up to 1. And when it does this, each one of those t values, it's going to compute an x and a y value, plot the dot on the screen, and then connect the dots. And so now we can see what that graph looks like, which we know as a line segment. And so we get that there. So notice you specify the x and y as functions of t, and then you specify a t step. Say cosine of t for x. Let's make it 3 cosine t, and for sine of let's make this 2 pi t, and make this sine of 2 pi t. Now this is going to cycle through both of these, both the x and the y functions of t have period of 1, so from 0 to 1 this is going to cycle through the whole graph once. And we can see it graph. And actually this is slow enough you can kind of see where t is 0, where it started, and then you saw what happened as the graph increased from t equals 0 to t equals 1. And so that's parametric graphing. Notice that unlike Graphmatica, you can't do polar and parametric and regular function graphing all at once. You either have to choose function or polar or parametric. So that's parametric. Let's do some graphing in the nspire now for a minute. If we go over here, I'm going to go to, let's just say 1. We're going to make a new document. I don't need to save what I had before, so I'm just going to click enter. And I'm going to click on add a graphing window to it. So here's a graphing window, and it automatically opens up where we can put this in. And this is starting out, it's in function mode. So again, if I want to graph something like 3, and then I hit the X button down here for X, 3x plus 2, enter, it graphs it. I can graph, Y. Okay, so if I want to graph another one, I can hit the tab button. Click out in the open here, I think, with your, this is like a trackpad. And then I think the tab button will, yeah, there we go. Hit the tab button and it will show up here. And so maybe I could do x squared and graph that. Notice that this is nice because I have the color version and it does give these in color. And we can do some really interesting things here because you can do something in this one that you can't do in the 84 plus, and that is you can click on a graph here and you can drag this. You get your cursor on it like this. Now it's got the little 2 arrows there. Let's see, you can click on it. Let's see if I can do this right. Should be able to click. Well, enter. Having a hard time doing it with the click pad. Do it very easily with my mouse. But I can click on this and I can rotate. I can also, if I get the little plus sign, I can drag it. And notice it changes the formula for me. Okay. So, for example, this is kind of interesting. Let's see if I can rotate this one. I can definitely, oh, there I'm changing some of the parameters on it. I'm stretching it. So they're different than that. Clicking the vertex allows me to translate that one. So there's all kinds of interesting things you can do there. So you start clicking on your function, you can actually change it here. So, but you can just do regular graphing like we can on the other one here. Now, to change the type of graphing, hit the menu button and go down where it says Graph Entry to Edit, and right arrow here. Oops, I'm not on the right one. Let's try it. Let's go back. And function is the type that we had before, and it has some special things for lines, parabolas, circles. So, for example, lines. You have some certain types of lines and you can enter in these values. Parabolas, it'll have certain forms of parabolas, circles, ellipses, hyperbolas, and just sort of some general conic sections. So it has some things for doing what are called conic sections. So basically some special kinds of functions it has. And then it has this number 3, which is our parametric graphing. So let's focus on that a minute. So then it has down here x1 of t and y1 of t, and down here it tells you the minimum and maximum t and the t steps. So it's basically just like the 84, but it shows up slightly different place here. So if I said 2t, I want t to be my variable, so I just hit the t button down here, plus 3, and then negative 3t plus 1. And this one, let's suppose I go from 0 to 1, for example, and then I go in a t step of 0.01. Okay. I think that's what we want. Hit enter, and it graphs it. Let's see, I think I can move that around. I can also change just change the window, and I can go to here and go to number 4, which is window and zoom, and I can go to number 1, which is window settings, and this works about like the other. Let's go -10 to 10 on each. This won't be a square scale, but okay. So let me go back to that. Now, okay, this is not where I wanted it. I just wanted this to go from 0 to 1. And go by 0.01. Okay, and so there we can see that I can move the label around, and you can see the line segment there. Okay, so we can do parametric graphing that way. Let's do another one. So to get the window to come up again, just hit the tab button, and let's do one with some trig functions in it. How about cosine of t? Now let's do this. 2 cosine of t, 3 sine of t, and let's add something to that one. Let's say plus 2. Let's see what happens when we do that. So that's a circle, but it's a little bit off-centered there. Okay, let's go back to here. I'm just up arrowing to see this. Let's see, that one's okay. Let's go down to y2, and let's change something here. See what that does to it. And there we have another circle. So anyway, we have different things that we can work with, and it does display the formula on the screen there. So that's how you can do parametric graphing in the nspire. Okay, let's look at polar graphing. Okay, so let's go back to the TI-84 for a minute. So if we go to mode, and this time we go to polar graphing, there we go. Okay, this time when I hit y equals, it'll give me r1, r2, and so forth. And then when I hit the xt theta button, it'll give me theta. So r equals 2 cosine of 3 theta. Let's see what that looks like. And let's change our window. Let's see. That's pretty good. And let's do zoom standard and see what happens. Okay, not bad, but maybe we want to zoom in a little bit, so I'll zoom box. and I can find my cursor here, mark a corner, hit enter, and go down to right here, and maybe just graph what's in that box, and then maybe we want to square it up, so we could do zoom 5. Let's see if this is going to show everything that we need. Yeah, so there, for example, is our rows there in polar coordinates. R is a function of theta. Now if we look at the table, it's going to give me theta and R. You know what I forgot to do is look at the table for parametric. So let's go back to that. Let's go mode, parametric. And we still got two different functions in there. Now look at our table. If you give it a t-value, it's giving you the x and the y. And if I right arrow, this gives me the x and the y for those t-values there. Okay? And so you can see what that turns out to be. Maybe that's not the best choice of t, so I can go to table setup and just say start at 0 and going up by 0.01. How about 0.1? Now if we look at our table, we can see x and y values there, and there we see some x and y values for that one as well. So notice it gives you t, x, and a y. And the t's are basically our independent variable, and the x and y are both dependent on t. So that's how parametric graphs work. If we go to mode and go to polar graphing, then R is dependent on theta. R is a function of theta. And so when we look at our function, that's given that way, and when we look at our table, theta is the input and R is the output. But we list these as ordered pairs the other way for some reason. They probably should be theta R's, but there are thetas as a standard way. So this will be written as the ordered pair 2, 0. Okay, let's look at that kind of graphing over here on the nspire. So again, we go to menu from our graphing list here, and we go to graph entry edit. Okay, and we want to choose number 4, which is polar. No, yeah, we could do polar. And now we can give this graph here and say R is 2 sine of 2 theta. And I think we want to actually put theta in here. So let's see. Theta is, yeah, you hit the pi button and you go across here, and there's theta. Okay, so let's graph that one. Okay, so there's our rows for that particular one. This is interesting because this is allowing us to do parametric and polar graphs at the same time. Let's see if we can put in a XY graph on top of that too. So just a function graph, and let's do y equals x squared, for example. And sure enough, so this graphing, you do have to switch the menu for each type of graph, but you can actually graph at the same time parametric, polar, and just regular function graphing. Whereas on the TI-84, you can only graph one type of graph at the same time. You can graph multiple polars or multiple parametrics or multiple functions, but you can't do a parametric and a polar, say, at the same time. So that gives you some idea of how to work with these calculators to get you some graphs. You can also do other things with them, like let's go over here to the graph of this one on the 84. If we do trace, it's it's given it theta, and it's given it an x and a y in the trace. So it's really kind of doing it like a parametric, where theta is your parameter, and then it's giving x and y coordinates of that point, which is kind of how it figures it out. And basically it's using the relationship. You can always, if you got parametric graphing, you don't need polar, because if you got r as a function of theta, then you can just let x be that function of r, that function of theta in place of r times cosine of theta, and that function of r is a function of theta in times sine theta, and then that will give you your parametric version of the same thing. And I think that's basically what this is doing in the background. Okay, over here on this one, let's see, number 5 is trace, and we can trace a particular graph, and so we should be able to get on a particular graph like this and move around, and it's giving me x and y and t there for that particular one. That was a parametric one. This one's a polar. It's giving me an r and a theta in radians, because I'm in radian mode. And if I click on this one up here, it's giving me x and y coordinates. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so that gives you, I think, a pretty good introduction to these graphing calculators. The nspire will do actually quite a bit more. It has the color, has lots of different more options. Makes it slightly more complicated to work with because it will do so much more. But it's a very, very nice calculator. Most of you probably have the TI-84, so you can see how that works on your calculator there. They will both do parametric, polar, as well as function graphing.